not so much that people are denying the fact that there are higher authorities and powers that they're subject to, whether it be physical laws or supernatural creator, etc. It's that they're talking about what are the attributes of that God, what is the character of that God. And that's where you get into the different religions, like, for example, Islam or Judaism, etc. They would say God has these attributes and this character, and then Christianity and Hinduism and etc. would say, no, God has these characters, and they all differ from each other. And so they have different positions as to what God is. Well, some of those characteristics are right, and some of those characteristics are wrong because they contradict each other. So one of them has to be correct. I mean, it's, you know, there are black and white issues on certain things. I mean, for example, you couldn't be half pregnant. So, and the same thing applies to the attributes of God. There are certain characteristics of God that are either true or false, and depending upon what religious viewpoint you believe, one of them most likely is correct because it's impossible for one attribute to be correct and the other one not to be correct. Otherwise, it's a schizophrenic religious viewpoint. The two don't mix with each other. There are black and white points about the attributes of God. And the best example of that is atheism and Christianity. The idea, just the very simple concept of, is there a higher power above and beyond the physical laws of the universe? And Christianity would say yes, there is a supernatural power. Atheism would say no, the sciences would say no, or that it's unknowable, which again is an attribute of God that they're claiming, that God is unknowable. Christianity would say that God is knowable, that he is able to reveal himself to mankind through his supernatural means. And so that's where we have the information that was passed down to us today about the revelations of God that were handed to us through the Holy Scriptures and the Bible, etc. So that the concept is that God does exist, and God has revealed himself not only through creation but through the prophets and through entering into the universe through the divinity of Jesus Christ, etc., etc. That there are ways for us to know God because God has actually taken the opportunity to reveal himself to us through these different supernatural means, and we get that information passed to us through the Scriptures. Now, another point that I wanted to make in terms of this whole atheistic evolutionary argument is because they've blinded themselves to the possibility of these philosophical or historical tales of God and understanding God through these other methodologies, everything beyond the physical universe, they've themselves, like, I guess the best way to put it is there's an example of an old a fable about the blind man and the elephant, where you have these different blind men that are trying to determine what an elephant looks like. None of them have ever seen an elephant before because they've been blind their whole life. Well, one blind man grabs the tail of the elephant. He says, oh, an elephant's like a snake. Another blind man feels the side of the elephant and says, oh, an elephant's like a wall. Another blind man grabs the ear of the elephant and says, oh, the elephant's like a handheld fan. Another blind man grabs the leg of the elephant and says, oh, the elephant's like a tree. And so each of them, in their own way, was correct, but they were limited in their knowledge because they weren't able to see things because of their lack of sight to get the whole picture. And in that sense, that's where we get into the problems with the sciences and polytheism versus monotheism, because what you have are people that are seeing the attributes of God through very finite processes, and they're not able to see the big picture. And so therefore, from their mindset, they see this aspect or that aspect of God. They don't see the whole big picture. And that's what monotheism brought about, is it took all these different attributes of God that people were figuring out through logic or through his revelation through mankind through different forms, and combining into one great picture of what the all-supreme deity looks like. And again, this is all handed down through revelation, through the Scriptures, etc., etc. But you look at some of the arguments that atheism and evolution has perpetuated in recent times to contradict these things by rejecting the fact that you can possibly know God through other means from the get-go, and therefore building their science on top of this foundation. You look at some of the claims that they came through their scientific methods, and some of them fit the biblical claims that were not got through scientific method, but were gotten through, in my opinion, divine revelation. Like, for example, they don't atheism and evolution and the sciences don't disagree on points of argument of stating, for example, that the cradle of civilization began basically in the Middle East, in the Nile River Valley in Africa, in that area, which is where the Bible says it began. I mean, you have the Yellow River civilization, you have the civilization of the Americas, but these came after the fact. The very first civilization was ancient Sumeria, right around the areas where the Holy Lands are, where the Bible talked about. And of course, this is before the advent of archaeology and everything else, but this is where the Bible says it began. The scientists tell us that mankind evolved from one man and one woman. They do this through mitochondrial DNA. And not only that, but they are able to trace the mitochondrial DNA back to the original area of generally the Middle East. That's going to happen anywhere. You could have potentially traced the mitochondrial DNA back to Australia, or could have gone to South America or Russia or whatever. But no, it came back to the same area as the Bible, and it shows that there was one man and one woman. Well, the Bible already said this long before the sciences occurred. They said that there was one man, one woman, Adam and Eve, and that all the world came from these two individuals. Okay, the sciences claim that there was a great environmental change that happened within the last 10,000 years or so, and this preceded the advent of modern civilization. And they have to say this, mind you, because the sciences claim that anatomically, the evolution of mankind was basically equivalent, basically the same, up till about 150,000 years ago. And so the question is, if anatomically mankind's the same, why didn't civilization develop a lot earlier? Why didn't it happen in different areas besides starting out where it did and spreading the world? Well, they base it on climate change. They say that you have the Ice Age, which lasted for tens of thousands of years, and then finally about 10,000 years ago you had the Great Melt-Off, or 15,000 years, roughly, give or take. And so therefore you have the ability for civilization to develop after the Ice Age, because you had a warmer climate which was conducive for agriculture, which was conducive for communities to get together to be able to form civil societies, etc., etc. Well, the Bible claimed climate change as well as a precursor to modern civilization. It claimed that there was a worldwide flood, and after the worldwide flood, the people on the earth began to scatter and develop cities and nations, etc., etc. So, but the Bible didn't have the supposed scientific evidence of the Ice Age and all these different things. It was already stating these things long beforehand. Well, these are aspects of divine revelation, in my opinion, that if you believe the concept of God is, and that God revealed himself through these methodology, through the scriptures, etc., it's very easy to see the conclusion of the scriptures come true. But if you take the fact that God is out of the picture, but the occurrences are still somewhat the same, then you have to come up with these different concepts in the scientific world to be able to fit a model that reflects itself within history. So the concept of climate change goes from a flood to a worldwide ice age. Of course, all the cultures around the world, for the most part, have flood myths built into their culture. They don't have giant ice age myths built in their culture, which kind of makes you wonder, okay, if you do recognize the fact that climate change was the precursor of civilization, how come you don't see the telling of this climate change reflected in an ice age myth as opposed to a flood myth? And then there's other aspects too, like writing. You can trace a writing system. Proto-Indo-European language systems all trace back to the same area where the Holy Lands and the Bible started about. There's all these different things you can go into that if you would accept the fact that God is, and that God exists, and that God is potentially supernatural and able to enter into the world and give revelation to man, if you accept this information, you're able to build a scientific model based on that. But if you throw that out from the get, you're left with the same kind of basic information, but you have to begin to manipulate the data to fit the idea that God does not exist, which is where the sciences are today. And this is my biggest beef, if you will, with atheism and evolution and everything else, is the fact that it doesn't accept the fact that it's seeing things from a religious viewpoint and through rose-colored glasses, because it's seeing things according to the model that God does not exist, and you can't know it but through physical scientific means, and therefore everything that they built on it is built on this faith system and comes up with the same conclusion, which is an error. It's garbage in, garbage out. So anyways, that's my take on where we are in terms of God is and God is not, and how the world today and atheists and Christians come to these conclusions, and other the rest of the world religions. Sorry if it's rambling. It's my second blog. I'm just trying to do this, but I'm throwing this stuff out here because I'm hoping that you'll give me feedback, because I want to hear what these different arguments are, so that I can begin to address them in a more organized fashion than the rambling that I just went through. But anyways, I sincerely hope you'll take a look at everything I just said and hopefully reply so I can begin to work out some of these facts and arguments and nuances of everything that I just talked about. All right, thanks.